Welcome to the Hibbing Economic Development Authority reorganization and regular meeting agenda. Today is February 26, 2024, and it is 6 o'clock p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have everybody in attendance with the exception of Mayor Hyduk. Additions, deletions, approval of the agenda. Can we get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Member Kivala.
Support.
Supported by Member Hoffman-Sockman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 2024 official appointment designations. So tonight we will do the designations for the president, and that is the first one up on the board here. Number one is to appoint the president of the 2024 Heda. Do we have a motion to nominate a president?
Madam President, I would like to nominate Sherry Mikich Brock.
Okay, we have a motion from Member Hoffman-Sockman to nominate Sherry Mikich Brock as president of Heda for 2024. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Vice President Drainus. Any other discussion? Do we have any other nominations for the position of president? Is there any other nominations for the position of president? Any other nominations for the position of president? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Up on number two would be to appoint the vice president of Heda for 2024. Do we have a motion to nominate for the position of vice president?
I will nominate Steve Drainus.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Member Kivala to nominate member or Vice President Drainus as for the position of vice president for 2024. Do we have a second?
Go ahead, John.
Supported by Member Schweiberger. Do we have any other nominations for the position of vice president? Do we have any other nominations for the position of vice president? Is there any other nominations for the position of vice president? Hearing none, a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Vice President Drainus will stay the vice president for 2024. Number three, appoint the finance director as the treasurer of the 2024 Heda.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion to make a recommendation or appoint Sheena Molnar as the finance director as our treasurer.
Okay, we have a motion made by Member Hoffman-Sockman to nominate Sheena Molnar for the finance director as the treasurer. Do we have a second?
Support.
Supported by Member Schweiberger. Is there any other nominations for the finance director? Is there any other nominations for the finance director as the treasurer? Is there any other nominations? With a motion and a second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number four is to appoint the attorney of the 2024 Heda. Can we have a motion to appoint the attorney?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to appoint Andy Borland as our attorney.
Okay, we have a motion made by Member Hoffman-Sockman to appoint Andy Borland
I'll
as
second that.
the attorney for 2024, and we have a second by Member Kivala. Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On to number 5, appoint the Finance Committee of the 2024 Heda. Can we get a motion to appoint the Finance Committee of the 2024 Heda?
In the past year, we had a couple of volunteers step forward for those roles when I had sent out that request, and that was yourself and Member Hoffman-Sockman, and that's been working out really well, so unless somebody else wants to volunteer here tonight, that might be a potential appointment.
So the Finance Committee would consist of, as far as this nomination, it would consist of myself and Member Hoffman-Sockman?
Unless somebody else would like to volunteer, and if the board would like to make that appointment tonight.
Do we have a motion to appoint myself and Member Hoffman-Sockman to the Finance Committee of the 2024 Heda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Vice President Drainus,
I will second that.
seconded by Member Kivala. Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Hearing none with a first and a second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 6, to designate the Mesabi Tribune as the official newspaper of the 2024 Heda. Do we get a motion to designate the Tribune as the Mesabi Tribune, as the official newspaper?
Motion approved.
Motion made by Member Schweiberger,
Support.
supported by Vice President Drainus. Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Number 7, designate the following depositories for 2024. Park State Bank, U.S. Bank, Wells Fargo Bank, Security State Bank, National Bank of Commerce, 4M Fund, Wells Fargo Advisors, U.S. Bank Investment Services, and Wells Fargo Investment Services. We get a motion to designate the following depositories for 2024.
So moved.
Motion made by Member Kivala,
Support.
supported by Member Schweiberger. Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On to number 8, approve the respective depositories' designated safekeeping entities.
Madam President, I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Member Hoffman-Sockman,
Support.
supported by Vice President Drainus. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So that wraps up our appointments designations for 2024. Now we can move on to our approval of the minutes. The first one is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Hibbing Economic Development Authority for January 22nd, 2024. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Moved by Member Kivala,
Support.
supported by Member Hoffman-Sockman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, approve the minutes of the workshop of Hibbing Economic Development Authority for January 22, 2024. Can we get a motion for that?
Motion approved.
Motion by Member Schreiber,
Support.
supported by Vice President Duranus. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Now to the consent agenda. Consent agenda number 1. Affirm the Economic Development Loan Fund as of January 31st, 2024, in the amount of $1,464,528.18. Number 2, to approve the disbursements for the month of January in the amount of $106,666.16. Number 3, set the next regular meeting of Heda for Monday, March 18th, 2024, at 5 p.m. in the Hibbing City Hall Council Chamber. And number 4, set the next Heda working session for Monday, March 18th, 2024, following the regular meeting in the Hibbing City Hall Council Chamber. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read and published.
Motion made by Member Hoffman-Sockman,
Support.
supported by Member Schweiberger. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On to the presentation. Ms. Betsy.
Madam President, members of the HEDA Board, tonight I have brought before you for our first presentation, the President of the Hibbing Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Shelley Hansen, and she has a request that is in your packet tonight for some continued work between the HEDA Board and staff and the Chamber of Commerce on the E3 grant that was just received from the Main Street program for our Hibbing downtown. And so I will turn it over to Shelley to talk about that a little bit and what she's requesting.
Good evening. Main Street America has been in existence for the last 40 years working to revitalize historical downtown communities. And part of the revitalization of your downtown community is also to encourage entrepreneurship. Last year, they started a pilot program it's called I practice this, Equitable Entrepreneurial Ecosystem. And so part of that is to identify your entrepreneurial ecosystems or the resources that are available to people within your community in order to start businesses and maintain them through the life of that business owner. And so one of the things there is with Main Street identified 9 different states that they were going to work with this pilot program. And out of those 9 states, Minnesota was one. And Minnesota would be granted 3 of these partnerships, and Hibbing was one of those partnerships. So we're very excited for that opportunity. Part of this grant focus, Main Street themselves will be giving us $5,000 towards the work. They have also said that if we receive a $5,000 match, they will then grant us with another $5,000, which would give us $15,000 to do the work of this grant. Part of the work would be to survey the entrepreneurs, small businesses within the community in Howard Street and First Avenue, but also the whole community as well. Now, 2 years ago, the Chamber did this on our own with just Howard Street and First Avenue, so I can tell you that that is quite a bit of work that needs to be done and quite a bit of leg work, that has to be done in order to get those surveys in. We'll identify key partners within our community and within our region that would be helping others to start their business or through that journey. We will have focus groups and also have 5 virtual workshops that will be covered through Main Street as training materials. So there is work to be done with this project, but it should be something that's going to bring quite a bit to our community. Is there any questions I can answer for you?
Madam President, if I may? I have been talking with the President Hansen about this program for a while. One of the things that we had discussed at this EDA board a while back was bringing some educational components to our downtown buildings. And Member Kivela had suggested training around brick buildings and how to maintain them and those sorts of things. And that's one of the programs that we've talked about potentially delivering through this Main Street grant program and trying to encourage folks to, as Member Kivela puts it, do the toothbrush versus the root canal, in fixing their buildings and maintaining them so that they're doing the small little fixes along the way to keep the buildings viable. So some of those programs would be like that. And we've had those conversations around this table in the past, really looking to work with President Hansen to get those programs developed and things through the chamber so that they're available to the downtown community at large. One thing I will say about this E3 grant is that I believe it's for your entire downtown community, not just your chamber members. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So all community or all businesses in the downtown and in the city of Hibbing will be able to take part in the trainings as we go forward. And so in order to be able to deliver that training then to non-members, she needs to secure some funding to be able to do that. Because right now, her members are the ones that pay for the work that the chamber does.
So, thank you, Shelley, for the presentation. So, in the letter, it says we're requesting from the city of Hibbing a matching grant. Are they really requesting from Heda?
From Heda, sorry,
Okay.
yes.
So
Yes.
if we were to approve that, then the motion would need to reflect Heda then?
Yes.
Okay.
Have you talked about this to many business owners? Has there been much interest?
There is interest. Like I said, we did a survey 2 years ago, and some of the information that came back to us does show the interest in succession and how they are going to turn their business over to the next generation. We do have interest from young people who want to bring in new businesses or ideas or want to revitalize businesses that are currently here. So the interest is here. It's a matter of understanding how to make these accessible to them, to get the information, the funding, the information. And again, we do work with the historical downtown. This organization works with the historical downtown so that we'll be able to revitalize that as well as maintain what we have.
And then how do you notify the businesses then that if this were to pass? Do you send the businesses that, the new ones that you want to try to get on this, do you send them letters or something? Or how do they know as a business that that is available?
So some of the first things that we'll be working on is identifying our list of businesses. We currently already have a list, like I said, from First Avenue to Howard Street from the work that we did. We will update that. And from there, we'll work with Main Street America's personnel to determine how to set out that survey. They have a link that will be our own personal survey for the Hibbing area. That will go out to all the businesses, and from there, we will do our own legwork to make sure that we've incorporated everybody and that everybody has the information. I'm sure that we will utilize all sources of media, from radio to newspaper to mail to our website and through email.
To let them know that
Correct,
it's
yes.
not just the Main Street ones, but the ones that are.
No, it'll be Howard Street, First Avenue, like I said, that corridor, but then we will also notify all other businesses as well that they are available to be part of this.
Does anybody else have any questions for Shelley?
Madam President, when we worked on our parking study, our joint parking study that the EDA sponsored with dollars, we did work with the chamber to push that out and the city's new marketing coordinator. So I would assume we will also join in on that through our website and those sorts of things.
And that's going to come up on a motion in our,
Yep, a
In
little
our-
bit later in our agenda.
Okay.
So, yep.
all right. Okay. Anybody
Thank
else
you.
have any questions? No?
And
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Shelley, for coming in.
All right, so Madam President, members of the board, in your packet behind Shelley's presentation, then you'll see that there's a memorandum of understanding. This was drafted by Attorney Borland, and it was drafted at the request of the IRRR staff to ensure that as we work to move this project forward to create the new building for expanded space for advanced machine guarding solutions, that there was an understanding that they were going to rent that space out, and that we were building it for them. So this memorandum, MOU, was drafted by Andy towards that, and it's in your packet today for you to review. We'd like to move that forward for approval on the regular agenda. Any questions about this at this time?
I thought we were trying to get out of owning the business building, or building business.
I guess, good question, Member Kivela. From my perspective, it's the only way we're going to incubate manufacturing businesses at this time. So I think while we don't like to own buildings that require a lot of maintenance and care, the intent on this one would be to sign a triple net lease at some point with the individual who would, the project inside. So it would be closer to not owning it. And this particular project, he is looking to purchase the building as soon as it's financially feasible. So it is one way to spur economic development in your community, is to develop these buildings, incubate new companies in them, and then turn them over as they can afford it.
It's a rather major project.
Yes.
So, trying to formulate my question here. And now he's up and operating must be operating at a pretty high level, being he's looking for a new facility.
Yes.
Has anybody checked on his books since then?
Yes.
Since now things gotten rolling? Okay.
Yes. The IRRR staff has also seen his balance sheet and his books and was comfortable with where they're at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I have seen them as well.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Betsy regarding this memorandum? Okay. Is it number 3?
So the next item of business around this is a new facility update and some service agreements and things. And at this point, in your packet, you will have some agreements that you can see. The first one for Widseth is dated October 25th, 2023. At this point, I am going to beg forgiveness from the EDA board for having to do some of these and enter into some of these agreements with guidance from City Administrator Przinski instead of coming to the EDA board, because of how we didn't have some clear lines of communication. And so I'm going to talk this through, and it's a little bit messy and complicated, but I beg you to bear with me so that we can get to a point where you have some information and then you can ask questions. So the first one is dated October 25th. I believe it's halfway back in your packet. I had to kind of page through to get to it. And it was written to Nick Arola because Nick was the one who manages our Vidovic or our North Hibbing building. And so this was an opportunity for professional services. So options, we've seen these options come before the board, right? Option 1 through 4. To renovate existing building footprint, to add 15,000 square feet, or to create a new 25,000 square foot. We've done, you've seen the options come before you and all of those sorts of things. Unfortunately, because this service agreement was written to Nick instead of to me, we had replied back to Widseth that it needed to come to me instead of to Nick, and it never got into my inbox. So I was working with them all along, and with the understanding that, they were doing this work without necessarily getting it approved. So that will be in your agenda later to approve the expenditure of the 15,000, because of course you've already seen the various options coming through, right? So it's been a little bit messy in communication, and I'm just, like I said, I'm going to ask that we go through this process and approve these. However, I have a solution so that this doesn't happen again and that you don't see them months after the fact, knowing that you've seen the work along the way and then have to approve the expenditures after the fact. So I've got a solution that I'm proposing as soon as we talk this through. So this first agreement for Widseth from October 25th to help develop those solutions was for $15,000. The second Widseth agreement that came through on February 1st was for 2 different scopes of work. The 5,500 is part of the demolition that we have already talked about and approved and worked through that process. So you've already seen that one, but completing the pre-design for a new 35,000 square foot facility of 16,500, that was the one that did not get in front of you. That came on February 1st. And again, like I said, I did work in connection with City Administrator Przinski saying, this project is on a tight time frame. I need to get some information in front of the IRRR board. I thought at that time that their meeting was going to be at the beginning of March, and so I needed to get this information tidied up and buttoned up by the beginning of February. And so this agreement came to me at that point, and I did sign it. You will notice I signed it on February 6th because I had requested it at that point. So that was for the final work of the architectural cost estimate to get the project ready for what is the cost per square foot for construction and those sorts of things to the IRRR board for their March meeting. Finally, you will see behind that is a Braun Intertech quote for $10,315. I learned shortly after, so you will see that I signed that agreement on February 20th, that staff at the IRRR wanted to know for certain that the land was buildable and what kind of site development would be required. They did not want to have site development with an extremely large contingency in the budget. They wanted to have much clearer site development. The only way to get to that is to do the geotechnical work with Braun. And so I had called Ted Hubbis to ask him if he could potentially get that done. They are doing soil borings this work, and I will have preliminary information by March 8th, which will allow me, hopefully, to meet the IRRR deadline. So these three things came in rapid succession in order to meet deadlines for the IRRR. It is not at all how I like to do things. So my solution and my suggestion is that I am going to request tonight that you approve an RFP for both architectural services and construction management services so that I can do that RFP and have those in front of you at the March 18th meeting pending the IRRR approval on March 26th. So you would see what those costs will look like and how, who's bid on them and what has come through, so that we have a much clearer understanding of what the most cost-effective and efficient way for the EDA to move forward to meet the IRRR's deadline. I don't like working without getting the two quotes per our purchasing policy, which is required. Anything over $5,000, we're supposed to get two quotes. And we weren't able to do this in this time frame. And it was truly due to a little bit of changing of the requirements from the IRRR and the moving of the deadline. So again, I know that was complicated and messy. I'm standing here for questions at this time.
So, how much do we owe Winseth then?
It would be $31,500.
$31,500 is what I have, and then we owe Braun another $10,315?
Correct.
So we have those two outstanding balances with no invoices that the vendors have never billed us for.
Correct.
Over a year, or however much, since October of 2023.
Correct. Widseth, the first 15,000 have not been billed. I went to check to our finance just to make sure, had it come through and I hadn't seen it. No, we haven't paid them since 2021. And so then at that time, we did the update to the vendor list as well because the W-9 needed to be updated from, the prior company to Widseth now. So like I said, typically I like to get two quotes. I like to have all of the service agreements in place and then we kick off the work, which is why I'm proposing that I do that work now and we have it to kick off on March 18th and move forward from here. What we have currently is architectural estimates ready to put forward to the IRRR board. So the scope of work that I requested is completed for the 16.5. And we have received the packet back from Widseth, which I had requested. They will be receiving the RFP as well. So, because they've done some of the initial design, they will know some of the items, but the packet that I received from them will be sent out with the RFP because it's literally just a scope design at this point and some costs, some total budget numbers.
So are we going between two fiscal years then? To be able to pay the 31,500 since this happened in
Yes.
October?
Yes. Yep, the 15,000 would be billed in special projects for 2023, and the 16.5 would be billed in special project, or towards the IRRR funds for this particular building.
Okay.
Because some of the other stuff was for the Vidovic building, but it morphed into a project to create the space that the manufacturing client needs. So I'm getting us back in line. Sorry.
So going over an RFP, is that something that has to be done?
We're supposed to get 2 quotes for any expenditure over $5,000. You can select for service. Sheena, please talk about how that typically works.
It's for, well, competitive bidding, you want to get the 2 quotes so you can make sure that you're doing your due diligence on the price. RFPs are a little different because they're for professional services versus quotes. And you do have a little bit more flexibility when it comes to professional services for going out for bids than you do for like materials.
So you don't have to go out for an RFP on architectural?
Not every time you do professional services.
So you had, when Seth go through all this, we're on a time crunch. Why would we go out for an RFP rather than just have them keep the ball rolling where they're at? Is the question I have for you.
Yeah, and I do hear that. I'm trying to clean up my process so that I'm starting from a good place. I did have them, it kind of started out as, please go in and look at the current building that we have and get us a quote on the roof, and what do I need to do to clean that building up? And can you help us get the bid docs together for that building? And it morphed into something different. And we never did a cut and let's go forward with a clean process. So I have talked about this with the vendor that did this work. There's nothing proprietary that I haven't paid, that they've done. I have paid for all of the work, or I'm going to pay for all of the work that we requested. And then I had a quick conversation with the current vendor saying, okay, I'd like to go out for RFP so that I can prove due diligence to my EDA and my community that I am doing the right thing with their dollar, instead of just always going to one vendor and, not asking. So typically, I would have done that work in advance, but because of how this project morphed from one thing into another, there wasn't a spot, I didn't do that work. And that's where I'm saying, I'm asking you to, so that I could do this, to clean it up so that we can start fresh and do it right.
Yeah, I would say that if we're gonna do that route, let's not do it on a project we've already had been 4 or 5 months working with them.
We actually started the cutover onto this on December 22nd. So it's been 6 weeks, but not months and months.
But not October 23rd.
Right,
We
that was
weren't
the-
working with them then.
Right, not October 23rd.
We're just getting billed for their services.
Well, we're
October
getting billed
23rd?
for the services from the Vidovic repairs that I was asking for. What I thought we needed to do before the end of the year was go out to get a bid docs for a roof and for some of the other mechanical and electrical repair. In the midst of that, it shifted to, and kind of with IRRR staff nudging, why would you invest $3.3 million in a building that may or may not, be worth that on the other end? Which we had done the due diligence to show that that wasn't actually, it's gonna appraise out at 1.6 million. So we have done some work, but this project really cut over on December 22nd to let's go in this direction. And that's the email I have to our architect at that point. And so there was a little bit of funding left over to finish that out on that 15,000. But then we needed to, okay, just get me this piece and I will pay for that scope of work, which was get me an architectural estimate for the IRRR board meeting, and that was the 16,500. So that's been about 6 weeks worth of work.
So help me when I'm in a jam, give me a hand, and then go out, see who else from outside the community wants to take the job. Kind of what I'm
That's
getting.
what- Never mind.
Jennifer?
No, I'm fine.
Oh, yeah,
I
I'm ready.
mean, go ahead.
we kind of have a, like you said, we got to get this thing rolling, we got to get rolling fairly quickly on it. So we got Winseth, they're in the boat, they're already floating out to sea here. And we're gonna reel them back in, start the RFP process all over again.
We never did it.
Yeah, I know, but, they're a qualified firm. Like you said, we probably don't have to, is this something that has to go out for,
Their
license
design
or not?
contingency fee could be up to $700,000 for this
Yeah.
project. My concern is if I don't RFP it, I'm single sourcing a firm for $750,000 without
And-
a buy your leave to this board.
And it's usually done that way anyway.
Yeah.
The way, she's talking, that's usually how it's done. What you're proposing.
For the RFP?
Yeah, that's just how it's.
One thing I will state, on December 22nd, I asked for the information by the beginning of February. I didn't get it for an additional 2 weeks. So my concern is, I don't know if that's their schedule or what have you. The RFP lays out a little bit of a time frame saying, these are the dates that I want things by, and they are in the agreement and in the contract. So that I can lay out a little bit more of what I need from this. Yes, I suppose I could single source a contract for this and go back and say, okay, we'll just continue on with the same firm and single source it and list the dates out and get them to sign that on a contract. But we're talking a $700,000 design fee. So I didn't want to presume that I could single source that without asking you all for that. I believe, based on sending out an RFP today, requesting them back by March 12th, getting them in front of you by March 18th, pending the IRRR approval on the 26th, that does allow us to do this process and do our due diligence. It will go to Widseth. They will have the opportunity to bid on it just like the others. And hey, if they come back with what you want to see, then you will have the right to select them at that time. This doesn't preclude them from doing the work. It just allows you to see what it should, what the rest of the community would bid in on it. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just suggesting that in the future, that's how I'd like to do projects. And you can pick.
I'd have no problem with doing it in the future if it's coming onto it. But that's the part that I have, that we're on a timeline. We've already been working with them. As you can see, there've always been prints that have come up. So, I mean.
There's actually, it's a CAD drawing, and this one,
You're not gonna change my mind if we're
No,
trying to,
and
I mean,
that's
I'm gonna
okay.
vote against going
Sure.
for an RFP.
sure. Not a
Just
problem.
because of the fact that I'm at, I mean, what's HEDA stand for? What's the acronym? What's it mean?
Our Hibbing Economic Development
Yeah.
Authority?
Are they located in Hibbing? Not that is that a Hibbing business?
Which one?
Winseth?
No, actually, they're statewide now. They have a site in Hibbing, but
Okay, so-
similar to
so
DSGW,
they-
we have sites all over the state.
Okay, so they probably pay taxes in Hibbing too,
I'm sure they do, absolutely.
though. All right, I'm done. I voiced my opinion. I mean, just because you were kind of, in a jam and trying to figure it out now, I think that we should fresh slate. Gummed up with information.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess I would just add, I've never been on the architects bidding when they brought in RFPs. What are we looking for that's massively different from one to the other?
Well, the first cost per square foot that I got was $260 a square foot, so the project came in at $14.75 million. That was a really uncomfortable conversation for me to have with the IRRR because they expected it to be around $7 million.
But in reality, whatever the architect puts on for their pricing doesn't matter, it's what's put on at bid day.
Right, but
You know,
what I
obviously, they can design things that are more expensive or cheaper,
correct.
But the final say is what happens on bid day.
Member Kivela, I'm not going to get to a board meeting to get it approved by the IRRR at that cost to even get to bid day. The project is DOA for the IRRR at that point.
Okay.
So I don't have a project.
So what was changed to make it so much cheaper?
I don't know.
That would have been a great question to know.
I asked the question, some of it, was a typo. Some of it was going to a construction firm to get some different costing and better costing, which is the other RFP I'm suggesting here for a construction manager. Yeah, I wasn't in the situation, I just know I got one price for 14.74, and then it came back with the prices that you're seeing tonight.
Do these prices include the build-out of inside the building, or is that done separately?
There is a little bit of it in there, the ductwork and some of that is included in this price. And then all the FF&E, all the equipment, all of that is coming from the project itself.
Okay, so
So this is construction,
he's getting a shell,
yes.
a shell, a bathroom, and some offices.
That's what we're trying to deliver, yes. A box.
Okay. Okay, on the construction manager, and what are you looking for in that?
Hoping for the value engineering right up front. I've been doing a lot of digging into this particular work, and a lot of the conversation that I'm finding from both the architects, which Woodseth did, they came back and said, actually this would probably get you better pricing right out of the gate, is if you brought a construction manager and they were part of the team. So
you're looking at an at-risk manager?
yeah, is that what, I got this from Jesse's story, so he's the one who's been working that part of the process.
Member Kimball, within the packet is Mr. Story's set forth the request for proposals. He does make reference to the construction manager at risk.
Okay. Okay.
And so the city just had another one where they did the construction manager at risk. The utility just went through that same thing. The general manager for the utility was really thrilled with that concept because it locked everybody in. You can't go over this price, otherwise, and so I know that was the general manager's happiness about that. It could come in, and it probably is gonna come in dramatically lower, but he knew a fixed price. If you go with the construction manager at risk, they can't go over. By statute, you have to go out for proposals if you're using that format, though.
Yes, I understand what a construction manager is.
Yeah,
So
I
we-
figured you would, but I just.
Right, so we have,
Well, and there's two different ways you can do the construction manager. It can be an at-risk or an agent. On this particular one, I think Jesse has requested an agent because he said it's, a box. So
I-
that's how he's written it, I think.
because I'm a construction manager at risk fan. So I think it works very well. You have one person to go to. It's, I think most of the work down at the airport now is being done by construction manager at risk. I know.
Yes, it is. And I got some information from Barrett about that. Yep.
Yeah.
And he's been pleased with how that worked, too.
Yeah.
So, any other questions about those, how we got ourselves into this jam, where we're at now, and how we'd like to navigate out of it? Okay, all right, excellent. And then, so would you mind then if I went on to the last item here? Okay, so then the last item is the Local Housing Trust Fund. The ordinance was passed by the city council at the last city council meeting, and they referred it over to the EDA for administration and process. And so Attorney Borland has written up the resolution for EDA to accept that on. I would like to then move that process and policy work into a committee if either the finance committee wants to take that on, or we want to form an ad hoc committee, if one of the rest of you wants to volunteer to do some of that work, happy to have you. But what we'd need to do then is walk towards that process to figure out exactly how we want to administer that local housing trust fund in keeping with, the city of Hibbing's priorities around housing. Any questions around that?
I just have a comment. Thank you, Betsy. I think it would be important to have the executive director of the HRA be part of that committee. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much,
Whatever,
Member
however we
Hoffman-Sockman.
do it here.
I'd actually like to have 3 outside members on that committee to help us with the process and policy. Nathan Thompson from the Habitat for Humanity, Scott Zahorik, or a designee from AEOA, and our HRA executive director, just to make sure that we're designing the program to deliver that funding to the city of Hibbing and our residents in keeping with what they have seen are the needs. Because this is for low and moderate income, or low and moderate income housing at 115% of the area median income. So they work in that space all the time, and I'd like to have them help us ensure that we're not either duplicating or putting funding out that won't get used, those sorts of things. So thank you, member.
Personally, I see it would be a fit for the finance committee, unless there's others that would want to do that. That makes sense to me. I don't know how others feel about that.
I think having those 3 on would be
Beneficial.
very beneficial, yes.
And then you guys can look at the guidelines and the funding and how we use our typical processes to streamline. Okay, perfect.
Is that like local funding?
Yes. Yep, so we're gonna designate some of our own funding, because I've kind of had that squirreled away in our, the EDA has had some funding accumulating for a while, so I have that. We can go and get it matched by the state. The IRRR will contribute, and then the city has local housing aid coming into the city that we could put into this local housing trust fund to hold for projects and then deliver out. And so that way it would give us a way to administer that local housing aid funding coming from the state without having to create new processes and new ways of looking at things. It would be standard process and a group that already is familiar with looking at those.
What would be a project you'd use that with?
So the HRA is doing a new housing development in the city of Hibbing coming to replace some of their current housing. And so we could dedicate the funds from this local housing trust fund to that particular housing development. Otherwise, the Habitat for Humanity could say we'd like to do a 3rd house in the city of Hibbing, and if we could get funding from the local housing trust fund in this amount, we could do that 3rd home, or we could make the 2 homes more economical, so we could do this, So my thoughts are the priorities are gonna be around owner-occupied rehab for low and moderate income through the AEOA's programs, Habitat for Humanity, and our HRA. I do not think that I would encourage any individuals for housing to be coming to the EDA to get funding to finance their home renovations or things like that. I just think we need to keep it in designated program areas where people who are really good at that already do that work. Otherwise, we're going to get a lot more work, and a lot more finance capacity is needed, and a lot more of my capacity is needed to kind of administer a really big program. So I'd like to keep it pretty streamlined and focused on some people who do it well already.
And this is going to be like facilitated then through the HEDA board?
Yep, so you would set your priorities at the beginning of the year and how you want to spend the funding that's in the pot that year. And then those, different priorities, the programs that suit those would come forward and apply for the funding, and you would disperse it. They would report on it at the end of their project, and you would report to the community. Sheena and I did find out today that the state does not require any additional reporting at this time on this. So it's the EDA reporting to the community how they're best using these funds to support housing needs in our community. That's what's required right now.
And it's up to us as a board then as to who is going to get these funds, or who is going to.
Yep, and that's how you maintain that local control.
Anybody have any other questions for Betsy on the local housing trust fund?
Okay.
I think we're okay. So then, I guess we can move on to I'm sorry, are you?
Nope.
You're done? Okay. Then we can move on to the board reports. Sheena?
Madam Chair, members of the board, item A, I'm asking for approval of the single-user desktop platform subscription with Treasury software to create loan servicing NACHA files. As you know, we've implemented Portfolio, and as we've been doing the implementation, it's been determined that we can't create the NACHA files out of that system. They don't have the capability with their software. So what they use is this Treasury software program for people who use it to create NACHA files. It would be $39.95 per month, and that would come out of the Heda's budget.
And I'm sorry, how much was it?
$39.95 per month. So then that would enable us to continue to send those NACHA files to our banks so we can continue to draft our loan. So I'm just asking for board to approve that fee per month.
Motion
Do
approved.
we have a,
At $40.
okay. We do have a motion made by Member Schweiberger and supported by Member Hoffman-Sockman to approve the single-user ID platform subscription for $39.95 a month to make the ACH files possible. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On to the loan updates, Sheena.
In B, I printed out the spreadsheet again with updates. This was as of the 22nd. It was also included with your packet for this evening. I guess one of the first things I wanted just to note on is we haven't received payment on the judgment from Rock and Rollers for a few months now, and then we also have the judgment now with Libation Station. I guess one of the things I just wanted to, as we go through these loan balances, is just reach out to the board and see if you want to do any other collection efforts when it comes to judgments, or just continue to just have the judgment be filed with the court. If you wanted to look at doing like a Range Credit Bureau or another law firm, or have Andy's office help with putting one of those garnishments or something on them, or just continue with the judgment.
I would kind of like to hear what Andy has to say, our city attorney.
So obviously, if you, collection attorneys who do that all the time, that's what they do. Range Credit Bureau, that's what they do. You're sacrificing essentially a third, probably a third, plus your costs are going to go to whatever they collect. You have to just keep that in mind. The judgment right now, I think the statutory judgment rate is 4%. So you're actually kind of getting good money on your investment. The judgment's good for 10 years. I have to double check the judgment, whether or not it's against both of the individuals on Libation Station or just against Ms. Demiano and then the entity. So if they ever go to sell that other building, the actual liquor store, that judgment is sitting there as well. I realize it's going to be difficult for them to sell. I think Betsy told me they're underwater, so that they may not get anything. Certainly, our office could do that. We don't do collections all the time, but I do some collections. We wouldn't be taking, I'd be just doing it by hour rate, not a percentage. So the time I put in is what I bill Heda for, whether I'm successful or what. If you bring in a lot of money, I'm not going to go into a collection type service and take that as my profit.
Do those fees then get added on to his balance, to what he would owe?
The costs would, President Mikey Brock, so in order to garnish somebody's wages or levy on their bank accounts, you have to incur some costs at getting what they call a writ and service, using the sheriff to serve those things. You have to pay a fee to the banks if you're levying against their bank accounts. So some of those costs, you can place those back, not the attorney's fees necessarily themselves.
Thank you, Andy.
I think it is a good discussion that Sheena brings up, though, has to, you just want to let it sit there and see where it plays, or do you want to be proactive and go after the money? Just so that we have a direction a little bit as to how you'd like to do that.
So right now, it's the judgment has been recorded with the court.
Yep, the judgment was filed and a judgment was entered. Yep. Based on the document that the Damjanoviches signed last summer. I think they signed a confession of judgment, and then they did make payments, so that was the understanding in the agreement. If you make payments, we're not gonna file anything with the court. But then those payments came to a stop. They haven't, I think it was around October, last time, I think, Heda saw a payment. So then per that, then we went ahead and filed. But we filed it reflecting that they'd made the payments. We didn't ask for the whole amount that they started off with. We discounted it based on what the balance was when they stopped making.
Anybody have any opinions or thoughts on that? On how we should go about it?
Well, the hard part is if there's nothing to gather, what do you do? I mean, how much effort would you have to put in to find out whether there's actually something there?
Well, I think, depending on where they work, but if they have an actual job, then you can garnish their wages. You can serve them with disclosures, so where they have to disclose where they bank. Obviously, if they got to the point where this pushed them over the edge of they filed bankruptcy, then
Then it's done.
you're done.
Yeah.
But they have to qualify for a bankruptcy if in fact they're even thinking of that. But if they're working and if they have a judgment against an individual and they're working at a job, they levy against their bank account or against their wages.
Could you do it for both husband and wife, or?
I just need to double check that they've signed that they're both responsible for it. I know Ms. Damjanovic is by the nature of the note. I'm not sure what Mr. Damjanovic as we sit here tonight.
Okay. If she hasn't signed or if he hasn't signed, that one's not responsible.
Right, he didn't sign the original note, but she did, but then they both signed the confession of judgment, so I just have to see how it's worded.
Does the court come up with a percentage of the wage that they take?
There's a formula,
Okay.
a formula computed out as to how much, so you supply that information to the employer, let's say, and then the employer does the math. City gets those, Sheena gets those served on employees here who have judgments against them,
I've had
and
the honor of
has
that
to do that computation, yeah. Essentially, you can't take everything they have, there's a threshold, but anything above the threshold can be held. And for banks, if they have a personal bank account, you find that account and you serve a levy, that money is frozen, they can't get it out, and then eventually it gets released.
And is that something that we would need a motion on, like, tonight to decide?
Not necessarily, I don't know, I think either I or the board should just decide some direction, give some direction either to Sheena to say, go contact a collection attorney or Range Credit Bureau, or give me some direction if you want our office to do it. Or somebody else.
So we don't need a motion to direct your office to do that?
I would say, no, you just have to tell me, though, do you want me to be, I haven't tried to be aggressive at all with them, because I know on the other one, I think the rock and rollers, because, at least at the time, it was like, let's just see, they were making some voluntary payment, let's just see how that plays. So there wasn't necessarily a direction, but you just have to tell me if you want to go after it, or to let the interest just have it grow.
So we haven't had any correspondence then since the judgment has been recorded with the court from these folks? They haven't come back and said, oh, please don't do that, I'm going to start doing something?
Right,
There hasn't
no.
been any communication?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And we have reached out to them
No.
as well?
I've filed it with the court because they stopped making their payments. That was what they agreed to. We won't file anything with the court if you make your payments. They stopped making their payments, so I filed it with the court.
So have they had adequate time? I mean, how long ago did you file with the courts?
I think, been there for 6 weeks.
Oh, well, golly,
So
that's
it's
plenty
enough
of time
time
to
Yeah.
get
For
back
them
in
to be
contact.
notified and to
Right.
know what's going on,
The
and,
judgment would have gone out to them too after they got
Okay.
entered.
Okay.
Well, we obviously have to do something. I mean, we have to move forward with it.
Right, that's your option though, Madam President. I mean, yes, if you want to be aggressive on your collection efforts, you certainly could be. You don't have to do that because it's accruing interest against, and you know that they have that building sitting there. But that's up to you. In other words, do you want to have somebody like me or Range Credit Bureau to aggressively go collect on that judgment? Or do you want to be passive at this particular moment and see if things don't just take care of themselves because in fact they've got to make a sale or something else? That's up to the board. Your judgments are both good for 10 years from the time they're entered. So it's not like they're going away anytime soon. And you can always ask that they be renewed before the end of the 10 years. You have to do it before the end of the 10 years, but you could renew them for another 10.
Well, I mean, they've obviously had enough time to determine what way they're gonna go. You know, I mean, I wish that they would have maybe reached out to us or something, you know. And if that's not gonna happen, I mean,
I haven't tried to reach out. I haven't served them with any other papers or anything. I mean, I could certainly send some disclosures to them and say, please give us a list of all your assets and so forth, which they have an obligation to answer, and see if that draws a response. You just have to tell me if you want me to start that process or just,
do they get a notification? I mean, when you make the judgment that it has been recorded with the court, do they get something from the court?
I get
stating
something
that they
from the
have a
court. I
judgment?
believe court administration sent something out to them because the judgment's against them. I didn't give them anything other than when I did that because they signed a document last summer saying, we agree to this.
Right.
That's what they agreed to. So after they stopped paying, filed it.
Well, do we want Andy to proceed with moving forward?
I think just another, I know it sounds crazy, I think just another note, tell them that we'd like a payment. If not, then we're gonna do some more action towards them or against them. I don't think we should just drop the hammer right now. I mean, 6 weeks is a long time, they haven't paid for a long time. But I think if you put a little more pressure, maybe they will do something, hopefully.
I can certainly send a letter to them, say,
I think
the
that's a
judgment's been
really good
entered,
idea.
it's accruing interest, you haven't made any payments.
Only because
I'll
I
give you
don't,
an update.
yeah, I don't want to see it go to, I have nothing wrong about credit collectors or anything like that, but, you know, if you lose 40%, you've lost a lot of money. Or if they go bankrupt, we've lost everything.
Right.
So I
Right.
think if we just put a little pressure on them, I'm not saying we're gonna, you know, put you out in the prison in the next 2 weeks.
Well, just kind of like a last-ditch effort.
Exactly,
basically.
yeah,
Done
that we're
everything.
concerned that they're,
I'll send out a request, and I'll copy in Betsy and Greg, so they see it, request to see if they will, gonna make any more further payments per the agreement they made.
And Madam President, Board, I have been in conversations with Security State Bank a little bit because they're in front of us on that property, to Andy's point of, you know, they're a little underwater on that. So I have been in conversations with them as well, asking them, what are they owed? Is there a way we can maybe, have a conversation about that? It is offered for sale, but at this point, it's not feasible for us to be this underwater and then offer additional and, to buy out the bank. But if there's some way to negotiate for an economic development purpose, I know there's been some change in personnel at the bank at this time, so I'm working with the new individual on that conversation and just having, Sheena and I had met with them prior to the holiday, correct?
It's been a while.
Yeah, just to have that conversation. So, if you're amenable to that conversation as well, I will continue down that path to see if there's any way we can move.
That makes sense to me, you know? Do what we can with the individuals and then also do what we could, for our, for
Community.
Heda, for
Yeah.
community, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good
That's a good
idea,
idea.
too.
Yeah. Thank you
So-
for that.
So we have kind of a little bit of a plan moving forward then?
Sure.
Okay,
Great.
all right. Thank you, Andy,
Thank
for
you.
your expertise. Okay, so, oh boy, all right.
And Ms. Melner, at this time, were you asking to be excused because of a?
Yeah, I will be. I'll finish the loan schedule and then I'll have to be excused to go to a basketball game.
to attend.
That's worth it.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to note on was just that Moxie, since that partial payment we received in January, has not been in to make her loan payments current for January or February. We have reached out to her, left voicemails. I will have Cassie in my department send another letter to try to get her in to make payments, and hopefully we'll get that note current by our next March meeting. Otherwise, I'll follow up with you on that. On the suite location one, I think Andy might speak to that a little bit later on in the meeting, but I did receive the paperwork from his office with the warranty deed and the estoppel affidavit. Then further down, Eagle Eye Properties, we did receive another payment for another one of the townhomes, so that leaves 1/5 of them remaining. We did partially satisfy the mortgage again, like we have in the past for the one that was paid off. Iron Range Management hasn't had any additional draws since the last meeting on the Castle Apartments. Elevate Skin and Laser, that's the new name. That was Northland Laser and Skin. She's supposed to be coming in tomorrow to sign the new loan documents. The Iron House took an additional draw of a little over $25,000 on their loan, and so now they're almost fully up to the $100,000. They have about $9,000 left to draw. Iron Range Restaurants, they still haven't drawn on the 126. I'll follow up with him again and see where that project is at. Red Rock Hotel, he was in last week to sign his loan documents. He said that he has not secured the private financing, or it has not gone through yet, so he is going to be using his private equity as the match for that loan. I did get the life insurance policy, did come through last week, so I have that on for his policy, listing us as insured for that. I guess I don't know if the board wants any more information when it comes to the sources for private financing other than his personal equity, but that's where he said is that he would be putting in some of his own equity from his other hotels and his own equity for that. Heartwood Center, they were going to close on that property last week, but it was delayed due to a phase 2 environmental, so that has been postponed possibly up to another couple months, it sounds like. And then on the back side, everybody in the Fund 420 is current on their loans, and we did have a full draw for Sammy's Pizza on their deferred loan of $75,000. And then you can see at the bottom a healthy revolving loan fund balance of just over $1.5 million. And we have about $576,000 that's been approved but not yet drawn from the funds. So, anybody have any questions or comments?
Okay, nobody else has any questions for Sheena? Thank you, Sheena. Okay, Andy? You are up next on our,
So, Madam President and members of the board, we did meet with Mr. and Mrs. Smart came into my office. They executed all the documents necessary. They signed a warranty deed transferring their lot to Heda. We were just waiting on documents that you guys signed this evening to send those in for recording. Documents you were signing were to reflect that the outstanding loan that they had would be satisfied, so that they don't owe an obligation to Heda anymore. Heda now owns that land. That deed will be sent in for recording as soon as I get it from FEMA, so then we'll be the owners. I think the only request that Mr. Smart indicated there was a sign on there from the Murrer family. They'd like to get that sign back. But beyond that, nothing else. I think at one of our discussions, there was a question as to who put up the private parking sign. That was Mr. Smart, he told me. he put the sign up because it was his lot still, so at that particular moment. So that, to answer any questions you might have had, it wasn't a mystery person who came along and put it there. It was Mr. Smart, but, no, they came in, they signed as soon as we had the documents. So we'll send those in for recording, and then the original deed will come back to Heda for the files here in the city.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so that is it from you, Mr.
Right.
Borland?
There's no other action that really needs to take place with regard to the act, that it's done.
Okay.
So, Madam President, Mr. Borland, at this point then, do we need to do anything to put some caution tape up around that for that little step that's on that property? Do we need to, you know what I mean? Is there anything that now that we own it?
You have the right to do it because you own it. We've gotten the deed from them, so you can take steps to secure the property now in whichever way the board, the city deems fit to avoid any liability. It should go on, I don't know how much we insure for the vacant lots that the city owns or Heda owns, but it should be referenced to Sheena for that purpose anyway, and talk to our insurance carrier. But if there's concerns about somebody stepping in a hole or something like that, yes, city has every right at this point in time, or Heda does, to take steps to secure the property.
And then, we did get the signs from there, is that correct as well?
So he just indicated he had made the request, Mr. Smart had, that the sign that I think reflects its MERS, he was hoping to get that sign back whenever that's taken down or whatever. Everything else is Heda's.
Mr. Kanata, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, to the Murphy.
Mr. Smart was the one who made the representation to me that he wanted the sign back for his family, the Murr family.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I
So
just
the Murr
knew
family
that.
is going to end up with it.
Yep, the
Smart's
Murr
right.
family wanted it back.
Right.
Mr. Smart was the one who represented to
Right.
me when I asked
Okay,
him.
yeah, because I had told you and I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if that's where you got that from or if,
Yeah.
okay. I'm just like, he's not taking that, right? Okay.
Just the messenger.
So perfect, then we've got that all cleared. And then from there, our public works staff was looking to potentially go in and, what was it, kind of level that out so that we can work towards using that as parking at this time, because people are already parking there and it's just not necessarily fully level for that. So I want to make sure that we take that action and, you know, it's all the way it needs to be. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to print something off here for Craig. Okay.
So I think, is that everything from you, Andy?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Would have been.
So now we can go on to number 3, and that's going to be Betsy again. on-
Right. So first item up for action then is to approve the agreement with and payment for Widseth for the $15,000 to determine the options for both the renovations to their current building, and then we did a little bit around the potential for expansion there.
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion made by Member Hoffman Sockman and a second by Member Kivala. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On to B.
Excellent. So this request is to approve the agreement with and payment for Widseth for the $16,500 to prepare an architectural cost estimate for the AMGS expansion to prepare for the Department of IRRR loan request meeting.
Okay, do we have a motion to make this payment for Widseth for $16,500?
I will make that motion.
Motion made by Vice President Drainus.
Support.
Supported by Member Schweiberger. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. C.
Excellent. So this request is to approve the agreement with Braun Intertech in the amount of $10,315 for the site investigation for the 13th Street site for AMG's expansion to prepare for the Department of IRRR loan request.
Do we have a motion for this?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Member Schreiberger,
Support.
supported by Member Hoffman Sockman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. D,
All right, so this is the request from the chamber then to approve the contribution of $5,000 for the Hibbing Chamber of Commerce for the Main Street America E3 in Rural Communities pilot project.
okay, do we have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Vice President Drainus,
Support.
supported by Member Schreiberger. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries.
Excellent. So in front of you then is the current architectural estimates that we have received from Widseth for the $16,500 that we paid. The first one is February 21st, 2024, which was a total estimated project cost of the $14.74 million, and that was for a 45,000 square foot building. On the back side of that same sheet, you will see that there are varying options because that was
I think
not something, yep, can you pass that on down? Thank you, Member Schreiber. So there is a 45,000 square foot facility, a 40,000 square foot facility, and a 35,000 square foot facility. Now, you will notice that total construction estimate is 8.47 million, and then the dust collector, compressed air, and crane with footings, they have pulled that out because this was all done and designed by the project themselves. We did not ask Widseth to do that particular work, because when we sat down and talked with them about that particular work, they were not in agreement with the project on how the mechanicals and electricals of that should be done. So the project is really needing to ensure that their equipment runs as designed. So they spec'd out this $395,500 themselves. They have also worked to spec out the crane themselves. That is included in the construction estimate, but the project has been extremely involved in the design of this building. So you will see that the 35,000 square foot facility is 8.865.5. When we met in December, the resolution that you approved was for 7.815860. So I have the request in here tonight to approve revisions to that resolution for the new facility to increase the amount requested from the Department of IRRR for a placeholder, because I did not have this amount. At this point, the project has laid out the building themselves and feels they can fit in the 35,000 square foot facility. And so therefore, I would ask that you make the revision to the resolution to the 8.865,500,000.
one question was,
Go ahead.
was this a draft or was this an actual legit?
This was the draft, the 14.47, because that was, or 14.7 before she met with us.
Okay,
And I said, I will never get that through the IRRR. So then we met with her, and the 3 versions on the back are what came after. So at this point, they're representing that this amount is, they've done their due diligence on a square footage of 35,000. But it's up to the board, obviously, if you want to allow for wiggle room in this project and say a placeholder of up to 10 million. I'm just presenting you with some options, and you can look at this and tell me what you want me to go forward with.
Okay, so we need a motion then to
You would need a motion to make the revision to the dollar amount
To
on that
approve the
resolution,
revision.
yes. Because right now, none of these options fit into the resolution that we've currently passed in December.
Betsy, how much did we talk about in December? What was that figure? 7 million?
7.815,860.
Yes, 7,815,860.
Where did that number come from?
That number came from initial conversations with Widseth. At that point, they thought we should be able to do it for 7.8 million. And you saw the four options, right? I mean, that 25,000 square foot option was 6.8 million.
And they have a 10% contingency.
That is for design and construction contingency is 10%, and design and contingency fee is 11%. The construction fee that I've seen that is buried in here is 3%, so the design fee is 8%. And I think there's 6% of the contingency, the design
The overall
contingency. Well, number 2 right there,
Yeah.
when it says design and construction, there's 2 pieces that make up that 10%, and then there's 2 pieces that make up the fee on the number 3 as well.
Okay.
And as I understood, it was about 12% for the design,
12%?
between construction
Yeah,
and
okay, yeah.
contingency.
Yeah.
Or between the contingency and the fee. So at this point, I need, what's the upper amount that you want the resolution to say? Because that's the thing I'm going to the IRRR board for. Now, obviously, I'm gonna work to negotiate a lower cost, right? But right now, none of these costs are coming in at what we've currently approved. So if you wanted to do an up to 10 million, that will allow me to continue negotiating a smaller estimated project cost, which then would go to the board at the estimated project cost that we have worked to secure.
So you're looking for a placeholder amount.
Yes, it would be an up to amount, and I need to know what that is. If you want me to go back and say 7.815 is the number, period, and they have to get down to below that, well, we can, because that's where we're at right now. But you'll notice none of these 3 options fit into that amount.
Madam President, I just had a question for Betsy.
Yes.
Betsy, I think you said earlier during the presentations that AMGS believes that now they can work their equipment into the 35,000 square foot.
Correct.
How far out are the gentleman's projections? As in, may he need more equipment, more size, such that, because I'm kind of cheering for you, would you like the board to give you the amount for the 40,000 in case, in fact, if the building was a little bit bigger, he might end up having need for more equipment or bigger equipment than what his 35,000 is projecting? I just didn't know how long I know he has a business plan, and you shared that with us here last week. I just didn't know how far out in the future, is it 5 years or 10? Just so he has a little bit of wiggle room.
Attorney Borland, when, as we've been going through this process, it's been a lot of, kind of trying to get that number, right? Because you're laying out equipment and those sorts of things. When the architects laid it out, they came back with 45,000 square feet. The project laid it out and came back with 35,000. So I don't know.
Sure.
But at some point, everybody has to make compromises. So if the project right now, with the current, he's running 1 shift. So if he lays it out for the current 1 shift, he can expand by operating on multiple shifts. And so I think that would allow him to get up to that $8 to $10 million run rate, which would be to quadruple in size. So I think it'll be okay if he's saying 35 is the number.
Okay.
That we can kind of put the stake in the ground at that. Yep.
Betsy, I see on the construction cost on the first one at 14 million plus was $260 a square foot. On the very last one, or in the last three, it comes down to $200 a square foot construction cost. How did he drop it that far? And is there room that you know of that he could drop it more?
This,
I mean, $60 a square foot is a lot of money to drop.
Is that him dropping it though, or is that?
Or whatever.
Is that?
It's Widseth.
Widseth
Yeah.
dropping?
Good, Seth, yeah.
so, you know, Member Jaranis, I don't want to speak for them and to answer as to why, but this is part of, you know, having a nice, clean contract would help us be in alignment, so that I'm not, you know, there's no miscommunication either way.
So could we do something like none of the above, or, you know, and just go up to 9 million and call it a day?
Yes, you
work?
could do that.
And that would be for wiggle room?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not much, but
Well,
just
I
a
mean,
little.
it's-
But I mean, not the 10, just the 9. So that's
And still for
200,000.
the- Yeah,
Yeah,
for the 35,000 square feet.
and that's what you're looking for, is up to a number,
Yep.
right?
Yep, I need to know what your max is, so that when I go to the IRRR, I know this is what the EDA board has given me as the ceiling.
What do you think?
I mean, obviously, I will work to negotiate the most cost-effective, efficient,
Right.
you know,
Right,
and two of these prices would be under that 10 million, roughly. I mean, because we're talking 75,000, right? So you can conceivably figure a way to work that in. And that's,
okay.
you know,
So you're saying to go up to 9?
Is that reasonable?
I don't know.
Or
I would
do you-
think
or do
10
you
million
come
would
in-
allow me to do either one of those two options and really do some
Okay.
good value engineering.
Okay.
So that would be a, you know, a path forward.
Well, it sounds like up to 10 would give you more room to negotiate, right?
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments on that?
I'm just confused on this first page, like, usually when it says, like, when it said draft, it'll say it all the way across. Is it just in print on it, or just parts of it printed, or what?
I don't know. I mean, I think that was from the backside. I'm not sure, because when I got it, it didn't say draft on it. So I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause you can just kind of faintly see some of the letters, like,
Yep.
it just seems kind of odd.
Yep, I would agree. But it was probably a draft because it was sent to me before we met. You know, and so typically when you send something off, then you know, sit down and talk about it, and then it becomes the thing. I don't know. Maybe that's why it's draft. But yeah, I can see it on there, John, so I assume that was the draft one. That came in the email prior to the meeting.
Okay.
But you can see they're just a day apart, so.
Right.
So I'm operating to the February 22nd one.
Okay.
I'll make a motion for 9,500,000. There you go.
There you go, support.
It's out there.
9,500,000?
There you go.
And we do have a motion made by Member Kivula, and we also have a support by Member Schreiber? To up it to 9,500,000?
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So
Thank
there you
you.
go.
All right, so next item then is to approve the MOU to rent the new facility to AMGS upon a completion of construction. My intention then will be to have a drafted lease in front of you at the March 18th meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Vice President Jarinas,
I'll second that.
A second by member Kivela. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. G.
All right, so this is the request then to approve an RFP for a construction manager and architect team pending IRRR loan approval on March 26, 2024.
Do we have a motion to?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion made by member Hoffman Sockman,
I'll support it.
supported by Vice President Drainus. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed?
Nate?
And I.
Aye not.
We have two in opposition.
Yes.
And member Mike Brock, you would be the deciding.
I guess I would be a vote for.
All right.
So the motion passed.
Yes. All right, so my next item then is a resolution to accept administration responsibility for the local housing trust fund monies by the EDA. And this is Attorney Borland's resolution, so I don't know if you want to do any presentation on it.
I think it's, for the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a short resolution, just essentially acknowledging that the city passed the ordinance, it's in effect, and that the Economic Development Authority would be the ones that would administer the funds that come by way of that ordinance.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the administration responsibility for the local housing trust fund?
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion. The President, excuse me.
Motion made by member Hoffman Sockman,
I'll second that.
supported by member Kivela. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Adjournment. Is that it? I'm sorry. Betsy, no more?
Could be.
No, that's the end of that.
That's the end of that one? Okay, so you are all set. So then, if we're all,
Move for adjournment.
okay. You have a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Motion made by Kivela, supported by member Schweiberger. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.